Hi, this is Dr. Kurt Wohler for AutismRecoverySystem.com. This video is on high levels of Clostridia bacteria toxins and why that is so important to understand with individuals on the autism spectrum. So there are many different types of Clostridia bacteria. We've all heard of tetanus, which is a Clostridium bacteria called Clostridium tetani. We've heard of botulism before, Clostridium botulism. And then certainly a lot in the news today is the dangerous aspect and the problems with Clostridium difficile, particularly in the hospital setting where many people contract this bacteria. It causes a lot of digestive problems. And there literally are thousands of people who have died because of Clostridia difficile, particularly because it tends to drive severe intestinal inflammation that leads to something called pseudomembranous colitis, which is a type of inflammatory bowel disease. There are many other types of strains of Clostridium bacteria as well, and some of them are actually considered to be beneficial. They're not all pathogenic. In fact, it's known that upwards of 100 different Clostridium can exist in the digestive system, not that they're there at the same time. But again, they're not all pathogenic, but some of them are clearly problematic. When it comes to Clostridium difficile and Clostridia botulinum, there are some things to know as to what we often see on organic acids testing from Great Plains Lab that are important for children on the autism spectrum. Now, this is just a sample of an organic acid test. I do some work with a group out of China, so I see a lot of these tests come my way. In this particular one, we notice here, numbers 17 and 18, the markers HP-HPA, well over 1,000, very, very high level at 1,200, and 4-creosol are both high. In any given organic acid test, about 25% of the time, the HP-HPA will be elevated. So about 1 in 4, there will be a positive Clostridia. 4-creosol doesn't show up that often, but it does, show up from time to time, and it's important too. It turns out that HP-HPA, one of the types of Clostridia that can produce it, is Clostridia botulinum. Now, that's not to indicate that just because it's there that Clostridia botulinum is 100% in existence, but that is one of the bacteria that can produce it. 4-creosol actually comes from Clostridia difficile. There are different types of Clostridia difficile. Not all of them produce the heavy inflammatory bowel-inducing problem with the toxins, but there are other strains that can produce this 4-creosol. 4-creosol has its own problems too. So when you have both occurring, it can definitely lead to behavioral problems, growth issues, and overall developmental problems with individuals on the autism spectrum. And this is one of the reasons that I think it is so critically important for parents to understand that they can't just assume everything going on with their child from a digestive standpoint is because of yeast. Many times the Clostridia bacteria are also present and issues as well. And what happens is that the Clostridia bacteria, when they produce these compounds, HP-HPA and or 4-creosol, is they can inhibit this enzyme. This enzyme is called dopamine beta hydroxylase, and it's responsible for converting dopamine to norepinephrine. And when we inhibit that conversion, it can affect cognitive development, brain development, nervous system progress and development as well. Dopamine is very important for attention, for sensory-seeking behavior, and reward behavior. Norepinephrine is very much involved in attention and focusing too, and also in memory formation. Now, the problem lies is when we have too much dopamine. If this reaction is occurring, then oftentimes what will happen on the organic acid test is you'll see an elevation of this marker called HVA, homovanillic acid. Now, it doesn't happen 100% of the time. So there are times where the organic acid test comes back, where the Clostridia markers, either both or one of them is high, and the HVA level is normal. That's not to indicate that it couldn't become abnormal. Again, every test that's done is done as a snapshot in time. So if things were just to be left where they were, it's possible that over time, more and more of this enzyme gets inhibited and we start to get more and more of a rise of dopamine and eventually see it spill over homovanillic acid on the organic acid test. One of the problems with excess dopamine is that dopamine is very chemically reactive. It breaks down into different compounds that can rob the body, for example, of glutathione. That's what this pathway is indicating here. Glutathione is a major antioxidant in the body that helps to protect our cells against toxicity. Glutathione is often deficient in children with autism. It forms other compounds that can be directly stressful to the brain and nervous system as well. Also, behaviorally, when dopamine levels tend to be high, children and teenagers and adults too on the spectrum can oftentimes become more irritable, more agitated, more emotional, in severe cases self-injurious, in severe cases aggression as well. And that can be a real problem, particularly when there's other toxicities going on in foods, toxicities, etc. So it's something to be aware of, and I want people to understand that not every case of aggression or self-injurious behavior is going to be linked specifically to Clostridia toxicity, but it's one of the reasons that you need to do the organic acid test to make sure the Clostridia are not present, because it can explain that problem in a certain percentage of kids. Now, there are some other types of Clostridia toxins as well. This particular one, 4-hydroxyphenylacetic, it doesn't show up that often. Maybe less than 5%, 5% or so of the oats that I see has this marker high. It may be implicated in causing dopamine levels to go up as well. So it's just something to keep an eye out for. And if you do see it, that's a question you can always ask me about through the forum in how to address these. So the organic acid test, as well as other labs from Great Plains Lab, Ritori, as well as other companies as well, are all available for self-ordering through the labtestplus.com website. And when any lab is ordered through the site, it comes to us. There's a written interpretation that comes with it, along with action step suggestions, supplements and other interventions that can be implemented as well. Okay, I'm Dr. Kurt Wohler for AutismRecoverySystem.com. Thank you.